have had some amazing guests on our podcast. I don't know if you know this, but Sam the cooking guy has been on, famous chef. We've had Landon Donovan, best soccer player in the history of America, arguably, Gabe's and I's opinion at least. New York Times bestsellers, tons of special force guys, but none of those conversations are going to be as riveting as this one. And as I said in the email that I sent out to the live audience, I said, when insurance is the topic at your personal life social parties, that something's not right. And so for the first time in the history of our podcast, what are we on, season 6 or something? We're going to have a podcast about insurance. It's been a place we've said insurance kind of sucks, no offense. But it's an industry that's difficult, full of regulations, highly technical. It's just not that interesting to listen to a podcast about. However, the conditions around the marketplace in California have just deteriorated over the last several years to where it's unaffordable. And there's just so many problems that it's impacting the everyday buyer in the community, not just businesses. It's hitting everyone. So we wanted to bring Stacy, I'm going to try to say it with the beer accent like she enunciated, Korsgaden. Did I get it close?
Like Coors.
Like
correct.
Coors.
Yes.
Like the beer Coors. And no Coors drinkers here, I guess. So we're going to have a talk with Stacy. It's going to be a little bit different than our normal ones. We usually just go down rabbit holes, and we'll lead with curiosity and respect, whether you're left or right, Democrat, Republican. It's really just about learning the issues, where she stands on it, what you think are the major things that you could get accomplished in the administration to turn the tide for us. And then we'd also like to hear what kind of help you anticipate that you'll need once elected. Then we're going to also get to know her on a personal level in the beginning. But for people who may just tune in from the outside on the recorded podcast, I want to start with the gorilla in the room. We're going to start with some meat, and then we're going to back out of that and get to know her personally. And the meat in California was a substantial change that happened in 1998 with a law called Prop 103. Now, most insurance people in the room probably have heard about Prop 103, most notoriously known for rate governance. It was implemented at a time where people were hurting, just like now. And so it kind of made sense, but it's a big law. It has a lot of teeth. It has a lot of depth to it. And so we'll be spending a lot of time on it, but there's an aspect of that law that I wanted to open with, because California is just one of 11 states where the people elect the insurance commissioner. And you could kind of imagine in your head, 39 other states say, well, this is probably better left to a governor who the people are electing to then pick somebody who's technical and understands the industry and understands business and has a good vision for what to execute. But 11 states said, nope, we're going to throw that all out the door, and it's going to be a popularity vote. There's pros and cons to that, but it hasn't totally served us well over the years because of the influence of money in campaign finance. And so I want to open on that. I want to just kind of understand your thought process. I don't know if you agree or disagree with what I said, but when it comes to Prop 103 and not being a governor appointee, what do you see as pros and cons of that, or what's your general position?
So when it was voted in, hello everybody, in 1988, it was actually implemented in 1990. Since that time, it's been an elected role, and guess how many of those electeds have had any insurance experience? None. So I think it's a critical issue because in the last 8 years, we've had someone by the name of Ricardo Lara, who has been under ethics violations. He's not running right now. But this is an example why I feel it's important. I would recommend that it be an appointment, and here's why. If the chief executive of our state, the governor, appointed you to be the commissioner of insurance,
We'd be in trouble.
Yeah, we'd be in serious trouble.
If that were to happen and you were doing a good job, then well done for the people of California. But if you weren't performing, our governor could then say, you're fired, we're going to replace you. But instead, we have been stuck with someone that's decimated our our industry and harm the people of California. So if elected, that will be one of my goals, to put some kind of, either you have to have some kind of experience, some kind of expertise, or I think it should go back to an appointment from the governor. Now that proposition, we talked about this earlier, it was written so well that it's very hard to make any changes. But I think it's a change that needs to be made.
What she's referring to is the law was passed through simple majority at the time. So you just needed over 50% to pass it. But written into it was, to change the law, you need supermajority. And you couldn't get a supermajority of Californians to agree that the sky is blue. So changing any element of the law is very difficult. And we're going to dive in to the rate side of it and the governance, how insurance companies do rate. We're going to talk about the transparency of rate filings, profitability, et cetera, in just a little bit, and how that got compounded during COVID when you're printing money and inflation goes hyper, and then how that law interacted with us at that time. But let's take a step back. You want to open us up on just getting to know her?
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting just to, how you got into insurance. You think about it and you look around at the people here that are in this industry. Usually it happened by accident, or someone in their family was in it. People don't really think about, hey, this is a really sexy career or business to be in.
We have 3 students right here who are doing just that. But aside from them,
They're thinking about it. What is it that from something from your past that's opened
Great
your
question.
eyes to that?
Well, I always like to reframe our industry because I believe in our industry so deeply. I think it's so important what we do. And my personal story is that my mother and father, we were in the Los Angeles area, and they relocated us when we were kids to Visalia. And my parents went and visited with a State Farm agent at the time, and they insured the home, they insured the car. We just had one car. And before my dad left, Dean Horseman from State Farm, kind of a family hero for us, he said, hey, do you want to buy life insurance to my dad? And my dad accepted a $50,000 term life policy. And less than 30 days after that, he was killed in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
So that set the course of my family. I know that I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I have. So when someone talks about insurance or really isn't favorable about insurance, it's so dysfunctional what's happening right now. But my personal story is that insurance is there when we need it the most. What we do is undefined because we don't know when we sell the right policy, we're not going to see the ramifications sometimes for decades. I'm decades later. And I'm sure everyone here that has sold a policy knows what that can mean to a family or to a business, et cetera. So, years later, I graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in business management. And my brother Troy Korsgaden has been in the business, and I went home to see him and my mom. And I had dreams of maybe going into the hospital administrative work. And he's the one that talked me into going into insurance. And that was in 1988. And so I've had my license since 1988 and I have believed in the whole industry and what I've done for the people in my community for decades.
how old were you with the passing of your dad?
I think I just turned 4. There were 5 kids, 3 older brothers, and I have an identical twin sister.
Oh, wow. Holy smokes.
So when that happened, my mom was able to raise us. She stayed at home. And then when we were all set and in school, she got a part-time job. And then later she retired at the DMV. So she was one of those good workers at the DMV.
What when you reflect back on life, would you say your values were set solely through her, or were there other influence as you were growing up?
That's a great question. She passed away in 2017, and my family, she did raise 5 kids that are high achievers. And, she said, growing up, you can be whatever you want to be. I just never knew it was going to be insurance commissioner. But she said, you work hard, you study hard, get to know good people, hang around good, successful people, and the sky's the limit. And so I'm proud of my siblings. I'm proud of what she instilled in us.
What would she say right now about what you're doing, and what would she think about all this?
She would be very proud. And she did retire from the DMV, but when she retired, which was probably a week, she ended up working with my brother Troy and my twin sister, who had an agency 2.5 hours away from mine. And she was the control cashier, and she was the one that she actually died at 86, but she worked up to the last month of her life.
Wow.
Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And so she was a driver and an encourager, and so was very thankful for her.
So who was the first of you three to dive in on the insurance side?
My brother Troy.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, he's 2 years older, but actually my uncle, Bud Smith, was a farmer's agent before any of us, and then my brother Troy became an agent, and then I became an agent, and then my sister as well.
Did you already have that thought going into Cal Poly, or like when does that kind of unpack for you?
I would say literally I had just graduated from Cal Poly, and I really did think I was going to go into hospital administration. And I went home and had lunch with my brother Troy and my mom. And my brother Troy said, you know what? If you're self-employed, if you work at a hospital, your time's not your own. But if you own a business and you own an insurance business, you can become more. You can earn more by helping people. Always the focus was serving the customer. If you serve the customer, then good things happen. And so that really resonated with me. He introduced who the district manager in my area was that I should talk to. And we signed the contract, and I have to say it was the right decision. It was a great career for me. I loved every minute of it because I felt that the agency served a purpose in my community and protected generations.
What was the thing that you were most proud of in your business?
Service. And I always told my staff, if you serve well, the referrals will come. Your reputation is the most important thing that you can have is your reputation, and keep your word, because, in a small town, I live in a small town called Grover Beach. The county has 300,000 people, but, word spreads fast. So out of my almost 40 years in the business, 14 of those I received, it's called President's Council, and that's the top 150 agencies out of 15,000. And a lot of that was based on service.
Wow.
So I was proud of that.
Yeah.
So growing up in Visalia,
Yes.
that's along the 99, right?
It is.
Inland a little bit. I'm curious because that 99 route up to Sacramento is a more conservative population typically voting.
A lot of farming.
Yeah, a lot of ag, trucking, and blue collar work around the ag. So, like, what kind of obstacle do you think? I mean, getting elected as a Republican is not easy, and we've got the primary, so you gotta grit that out, get the primary nod, and then you gotta overcome a state where Republicans don't typically, they're not the shoe-in, right? So, how do you feel your experience is going to be able to connect with the broader audience and be able to pull those votes in?
Well, there's a little story behind that, because before I ran, I was advised to change my party, because when you look at your ballot, it will say what party you belong to. And the most important thing, at 18, I've always been a Republican, so I wasn't, just for the change of the wind, I wasn't going to change anything about who I was. I am who I am. But with that said, this is a non-party issue. Everyone's hurting. Everyone's suffering, really, with the higher costs of insurance and there's no access to policies, especially up in our foothills and high wildfire areas. So your question is, how do I get past that? Then my response is experience. When I tell people, and I have traveled this wonderful state of California, when I had tell people that since 1990, we have not had anyone with the experience, insurance experience, and I tell them the experience that I have, I get applause because they know that experience and the ability to serve our customers, it's paramount. So that's how I'm going to explain it. This is a highly technical, complicated, wonderful business. And we had someone just this last 8 years that I don't know if he had a regular job, much less any experience in insurance. It's been a catastrophe. We do not have time for a learning curve. And people that I'm running against, at least some of the top tier candidates, again, they do not have experience. So that's my communication, is experience does matter.
Why do they run? If they have no experience, why are they running for that role?
I ask myself that.
To become governor, right?
What's that?
On a path to become governor or another position within the state.
A couple people are termed out in their role and they think, well, insurance commissioners have a lot of power. It's a big, important role. So I'm thinking maybe that is something for the resume. But I'm thinking that, there's a couple attorneys, there's a couple legislators, and I'm thinking, well, legislator, that's a representative. That seems reasonable if I were to run to be a legislator. But I certainly wouldn't run to run the bar association. I'm not an attorney. But it does make sense for me to run the Department of Insurance because, number one, I've had a successful business and I know what winning is. Winning is being able to provide an abundance of product to our consumers at a competitive price. We have none of that right now. And in California, I think we've been beaten down so much in the last several decades that we've forgotten what it means to be abundant. We can be abundant. Insurance companies want to come to California under the right conditions. And we can do that in California, and I'm excited about it.
What do you say to those people that are just kind of feel disillusioned by the politics in California? And, that usually you have this, well, it's California, that expression.
I say it's California. It's California. We can do anything. Look at our history. Look at what we've done. This is where innovations thrived, but it's left our state. Look at Hewlett-Packard, Tesla. I was even shocked to see that Playboy left California.
Oh, that's terrible.
That's wrong. That's wrong. We should have, if innovation starts here, success can stay here. And my role, my specialty is insurance. Whether it be, you've interviewed soccer players. You know what winning means. You've looked at it. I know what winning means in California under the insurance market. And I see young people here in this group, all here that are young professionals and seasoned professionals. What we do is magnificent for the families and for the businesses. And I believe that our politics has tried to squash it. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's someone up there that thinks that it would be a great idea to have a single payer homeowners policy. That frightens me. When I open up my envelope,
Everyone has the fair plan kind of thing.
wouldn't that be great?
Ugh. Well, so let's set some foundation here
Sure.
for everybody who's listening. There's a bunch of insurance company people that are in the room. So some of what I'm going to say comes from their feedback, which is an opinion on the process. But under Prop 103, it sets some limits on how much insurance companies can raise rates. Again, it was put into place at a time where they were trying to protect the everyday person from being taken advantage of. So they're setting limits. I believe it's 7% on personal lines and 15% on commercial, that if the insurance company is seeking more rate than that, they can put them through basically a secondary process. So you throw COVID on top of that. When we printed 40% of our GDP in money, think about how much inflation that created. So without any loss at all, insurance companies are already just way behind the 8 ball. And the subjective part that we were hearing was that there was a passive aggressive stance that if they submitted for a rate increase that because they couldn't make ends meet, that it would take years, like literally around 2 years, 2 to 3 years. Even AI backed that number. And if they submitted rate decreases, it would get accelerated through. And so that is the government trying to set price through saying, running on a ticket that I'm going to control price, I'm going to bring it back down. There's no government entity that can do that. The insurance company said, well, if that's what you think you're going to do, we're going to leave. It's the supply and demand she's talking about in creating a competitive marketplace. And the problem that doesn't get considered here, at least I think, is there's already rate transparency. We can see who's profitable. If one insurance company is crushing it, they have quarterly reports, they have insurance filings, everybody can see it would come in and create a competitive environment. So the question I'd have for you is, knowing it's going to be hard to overturn elements of that law, like how do you deal with issues like that to create the competitive environment while having to deal with the confines of Prop 103?
That is a great question, and that's the meat of the problem. And I would like to start it by saying that when Prop 103 was voted in 1988, that opened the door to overregulation and price controls. And I educate the people that I talk to, whenever you have overregulation and price controls, what do you get? A plus B equals C and D. Overregulation and price control gives you scarcity of product,
Higher prices.
and higher prices. And that's exactly what's happening. So how do we fix it? So what the original intention of Prop 103, it came about when there was a law change in the courts relating to how auto claims were paid out. So auto claims in the late 70s and the 80s were just really going through the roof. So they came up with this proposition, and anything that is, like you said, right around 7%, it goes through this rating process that it's a public hearing. And so the public hearing, it can get really detailed and convoluted, which I won't put anyone to sleep, but it was supposed to take 60 days. And it can take over a year, and I'm sure it's taken for some companies over that. So no company is going to want to do business like that. So what's the solution? Well, if Prop 103 says, as insurance commissioner, if Prop 103 says 60 days, believe me, it's going to be 60 days. If they file a rate, we have to process that in a timely manner so insurance companies feel comfortable coming into the state. At the same time, I will build a new business division at the Department of Insurance, welcoming in new companies into the state of California. What would be a recipe for disaster is if we have 5 big companies with no competition. We want competition. Because we want better pricing, and we also want better service. That comes through competition. So we're going to welcome in new insurance companies, and we're going to speed up the rating process. But here's a factor that no one else talks about, which I think is so interesting. In California, we have what's called a rising risk environment. So what do I mean by that? We had an interesting conversation where we've had a change in California how we treat our timber industry and our beautiful Sierras because of environmental policies and the fact that maybe we did some clear cutting at some time where we suppressed our timber industry. So we aren't properly thinning our forest. We have stacked brush all across California. Again, it could be environmental policies. It could be some kind of disconnect. So we have stacked brush. We have increased crime because of Prop 47 and 57. Everyone here's heard of smash and grab. Those are the propositions that we voted in like right around 2013. So we have a rising risk environment. We have a Department of Insurance that won't allow proper rate. That's a recipe for disaster. But here's the positive side. How do we fix it? We get people in charge that want to lower that risk, that want to manage our land. So we have healthy forests. We have healthy communities. And then we have a Department of Insurance that welcomes more insurance companies, encourages product into our marketplace, which will have more competition. That's a recipe for success.
Why do you think that the department today doesn't, take so long to approve rates, knowing that, that's their job is to do that?
I believe that if you are a political person in that role, your role is more self-preservation, and it's very beneficial to say to their constituent, "I saved you 10% on your auto insurance." Sounds like a Geico commercial. I saved 10% or I saved 15% on your work comp or whatever. It's not a market-driven factor. It's a self-preservation factor. And I think Californians need to realize what's happening. That's why it's so messed up. It's inappropriate that the person that is supposed to advocate for the consumer, for a healthy consumer, a consumer that has plenty of choice, they're looking out for themselves. And I think that's what's happened.
But it can't be like, so, I'm the current insurance commissioner. I've done such a great job because rates are kind of high in California. So how does that help him?
I don't know. I think it's kind of like that frog that boiled in the pot.
Yeah.
All of a sudden he realizes that he has boiled the pot right when he's leaving. He's made some major announcements last week that are also very destructive. And may I go into that?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so with the Pacific Palisades, Malibu, and Altadena fire, I, as an agent, had heard that there were complaints about how the claims were adjusted like 2 months after the claims. It's called
It's a State Farm.
It's a State Farm issue.
So the
it
adjuster,
could be-
where they're just rolling adjusters.
Yes, they call it a adjuster roulette.
Yeah.
And so, but in reality, what happens when there's a big catastrophe, they will bring in a team of adjusters from all over the country to handle claims right away, to provide a check for loss of use and clothing, etc. But what I was hearing is they were keeping that process too long. Now, as the commissioner, number one, what I would have done is I would have had some kind of MASH unit right there in the Palisades. That's service. So if people were having problems, if you were having problems with your claim, you could come with your policy and say, "I can't get a hold of my adjuster." The Department of Insurance would be able to react, pull in the company and say, "Okay, we need to solve this." There's different levels of authorization or communication. One can start with just talking to the company. You can subpoena, you can fine. Well, last week it went nuclear. It said, well, we're not only you need to see a judge, you need to possibly pay a fine, but also we might suspend your license for 12 months. Okay, we're in an environment where we need more carriers. They have 20% market share, and he's actually saying to the company, we might suspend your license? Wow. Now, is it justified that maybe we go nuclear with this company? I don't know. But what I would say is anybody that owns a business, if there's a problem, when do you handle it? Right then.
Yeah.
So you go to the company, you call the CEO in, you bring policyholders in, and you say, let's get this figured out.
Yep. You solve the problem first, then decide how to hold them accountable to what they did.
Yeah, you
Exactly.
don't wait more than a year or two.
Yeah.
And so
100%.
what is the department's role? Is to protect the consumer. Well, what happens if State Farm wants to leave the state? It's a hard process, but they totally can do it. That means 20% of the consumers that have a good policy, then we've made a really bad, potentially much worse.
Yep. So we were talking a little bit before the podcast, and I'm a bit of a green thumb. And so as I was doing my AI research, I was like, hey, and I've been to carrier events where they're like, we're paying tons more money on property losses across the whole country. Some fire in California, some, earthquake, flood, hurricane elsewhere. So I bought into that. But Claude challenged me back and said that the number of fires in California haven't really changed that much over time. We had about the same number of fires in 2003 as we did in 2024. Same number and almost the same acreage that burned. And then you said, hey, can you pull the data for 1993? I'm like, well, Claude probably can, you know? And so we pulled it for 93. Wasn't that much different in 1993. We're having fires and things are burning down in acres across the state, but the value of what's burning down has gone up considerably. And so you have a different demographic of risk that's out there. How do you get people educated, get the insurance companies to be able to rate the way they need to rate for where people are living in proximity to fire in a way that's healthy for everybody?
So one of the things that you and I talked about too, I was surprised that was a great number, that really the number of fires hasn't changed. But since 2000, these mega fires, these 100,000 acres, what's happening, whether we call it climate change or how we manage the forests, these fires are becoming hotter, and the fuel is, we've got much more fuel. And like what you were saying, is that we have people that are living in the foothills where these fires can burn and where these fuels have accumulated. So how do we make it all work? That's the key question. And so I am a member of the Fire Safe Council in my county, in San Luis Obispo County. And for those of you that don't know what a Fire Safe Council is, in California, we have 58 counties. And a Fire Safe Council is a grouping of fire, police, community leaders, CAL FIRE, community leaders like in towns or in the county. We get together and we prioritize treatments in areas that are of concern. And then we have an executive director. We ask for grants from the state of California, and I'm a conservative. So I believe that the solutions are best done locally. So the money comes from the state, goes to the county, and we prioritize where that treatment's going to be. And my favorite treatment is we have a company called the Goat Lady, and she has goats. We use fire, we use hand crews, we use timber crews.
I've seen them out by El Cajon, actually.
The
on
goats?
the hillside out there.
Isn't that awesome? I think it should. Every county should have
I've
one.
seen the New Zealand sheep in Colorado doing the same things.
Really?
Yeah, they bring them from New Zealand.
Well, they're very, very efficient.
Yep.
So
They're very hungry.
they're very hungry. Yes.
Dude, that was your first dad joke. We're a half hour in. That took a while.
So I would like to see, my plan is to use the fire safe councils, and I pray for a very strong governor that will support me on this. And I'm already working on some legislators that are going to be heroes, that are going to help support me in lowering the fire risk in a healthy, green way, where we don't see these mega fires that have really destroyed our environment. For example, up in Shaver Lake, I don't know if anyone knows where Shaver Lake is. It's east of Fresno. There was a huge fire in 2020, and I was just recently up there. I go up there every year, hiking and boating and stuff like that. The area where the mega fire was, there's not a sprout. And I talked to a botanist or a specialist there, and they said it was so hot that it will take that much longer for the, I'm not going to sound like a botanist here, but for the dirt to support these new trees or this growth, or they need to plant. So we can do better. Again, we're California. So how do we make insurance companies come back in? I think that was your question. How do we support this? I would like to see it done on the county level. Bring state money in to the county to encourage communities. Here's an example. 2 weeks ago, I went to Tuolumne County. That is east of Sacramento.
Okay.
And I met with some county supervisors, and we had a town hall. They literally opened up a map, and they literally treated the land all around their towns. And they said, we should be the first to insure. And I said, you have my commitment, Tuolumne County. When I'm commissioner, I'm going to have insurance companies come and look at your county to see if we can get competition in your county, because they've treated their lands and they've mitigated. They've done it on a home level and a community level and a county level. It's exciting.
We'll bring our film crews and document it all and help you create a social media
You
campaign.
got a commitment. That
Yeah,
sounds good.
there it is.
All right.
I'm just listening to you talk, and you made a joke about me running for insurance commissioner. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I don't know how you feel, but there's no way I'd go from where I'm at today to articulating all these, the vision and the strategy that you're talking behind it. How do you go from being a farmer's agency owner to having this full-blown plan and these specific strategies to tackle?
A lot of analysis, a lot of talking to the experts. I mean, this is going to take environmental experts. It's going to take fire, police. It's going to take cooperation with our legislators and our governor. And the insurance business has been instrumental. Professionals in our business, because insurance companies want to do business in California and they know what the barriers are. I have to tell the story because I talked to an executive that wanted to bring a portfolio of property insurance into California. They called the Department of Insurance no less than 20 times. They never picked up the phone and they never called him back. And it was a portfolio of property. They were going to, 15% of it was going to be in high risk fire areas. That would relieve a lot of people that are suffering under the FAIR plan. And then the other 85% was going to be in towns, you know, competition. And so they never called back, and they turned their back on California, and they went to 6 different states, and they were approved in less than a week. So that's number one plan. I said, well, that's where I got my idea for a new business division. We have to be prepared. That's what we do in business. We have to look for opportunity to serve. So that's where I see the abundance.
That's a novel idea of welcoming a new business.
Isn't that something? And I did that my whole career. You know, when I set up my agency, it was just myself. You know, I did everything, and I swept the front porch and wrote an auto policy and a life policy in one day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you build it out with staff, and I called it like the Costco of insurance. You want to handle it all. Well, we can do that. I bet there's some people that are watching that are wondering, well, why don't we have all the long-term care possibilities that other states have? I wondered that my whole career. That's going to change. We need to have that in California. That's just one example.
Yeah, you mentioned it's going to take a cooperation from a lot of different people, and do you think there's going to be appetite at the governor level to cooperate?
I hope so. You know, I can't imagine anyone with a heart would not be concerned about this, because I think about this one lady that I met in Grass Valley. She was in her 80s, and she came up to me and she took my arm and she goes, Stacy, I'm so concerned. I'm in my parents' house. She had inherited it, and it was a $900 fire policy maybe 5 years ago. And it had grown to be over $9,000. And she goes, I'm afraid for my next renewal. She goes, I might have to sell my house. She's in her 80s. So if anyone hears those stories, how could a governor not have a heart and cooperate? Because it will take a strong governor to make the changes necessary and make some hard decisions. We have environmental policies that are not serving our environment. And I know I consider myself an environmentalist. I consider myself a conservationalist, probably is a more accurate term. And we can do better.
Well, we have a lot of people that are sitting in the audience. I want to get to any specific questions anybody may have, but I want to ask one more question, and it's probably a tough one to put into layman's terms. But in case there are people who are going to be listening to this that don't know about insurance, are you able at a street level to articulate the damage that was done to the FAIR plan through the Palisades fires, and how that's going to impact us moving forward?
Yes.
It's kind of a big question, and I don't know if you can put it on street level, but it would be good to hear your opinion on it.
So a lot of people are right now on the FAIR plan, so it's a great question. So the FAIR plan is a private company, but it is backed by the admitted carriers in California. So people, if you are on a FAIR plan and there is a big loss and there is not enough money to handle the claim, that particular claim, what happens is there is an assessment. So for example, let's say I'm the FAIR plan, I want to cover a claim and I don't have enough money. Then what the Department of Insurance says that if you are an admitted carrier, you have to help pay for that claim based on the percentage of business that you do in California. So if you're State Farm, you're going to owe 20%. If you're Farmers, you're going to go 14%, et cetera. So the last claim, there was an assessment of $1 billion. What a lot of people don't know is that ultimately goes to the policyholder. At least 50% of that particular claim went to the policyholder. The other 50% was paid out by the insurance company. Next time, it could be 100% to the policyholder. Was that an okay explanation?
I actually thought it was pretty understandable. You guys?
Okay, so this is what we need to do. So I tell the FAIR plan is a safety net. And if you're on the trap, let's say you're in the circus and you're in the trapeze, you're swinging around and you want this safety net to catch you. Our safety net and the FAIR plan, it's so heavy, it's on the ground. Okay, it's not a protection. So what we need to do is we need to make our regular admitted market healthier. We need to take people off that FAIR plan as fast as we can to raise up that FAIR plan to make it healthier. That's the best visual I can come up with.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to capacity. I worked on the insurer side for a little while in underwriting, and insurance companies and underwriters have so much capacity to start the beginning of a year in whatever it is they're writing. And so if they hit their capacity goals in May, then they're probably shutting it down the rest of the year. They're like, we can't take any more. And so what you're explaining comes to mind is that if I'm State Farm and I have 20%, I'm thinking I have to shed half this and get down to 10 or less because I need a reserve fund if I'm going to get assessed in the future. And so then they're pulling capacity back and we're sucking out of the marketplace and it's pulling the competition out, which is then leaving us with higher rates or the FAIR plan. And so it's just sort of a cycle of disaster if we don't have enough competition. It's like really what we have to get people insurance companies coming back into the marketplace.
Great explanation. I'm going to use that, okay?
Okay. All right.
So, and if you think about that willful negligence of the Department of Insurance not answering the phone when a company was ready to come back to California, wow, it's bad.
Yeah. All right, let's take a pause here. We have plenty more questions. So if y'all are feeling shy or you haven't had afternoon coffee, don't worry, we'll go back at it. But does anybody have questions that they would like to ask? Go ahead.
Got several. Ask all of them, and you can decide which one you want to answer.
Why don't grab the mic?
Glenn, you only get one.
He's trouble, I can tell.
Pick your favorite, Glenn. Pick your favorite.
Well, number one is, how as a Republican do you get elected to anything in this state?
That is a great question, and I'm going to fall back on the experience. You know, I've been in sales my entire life, and I never thought of myself as a salesperson. I thought of myself as a service person. You know, what is most important for you? So now I have a larger audience. What is best for California? And what's best for California is someone that is very experienced and has the heart of a lion, really, that knows what's best or understands what the consumer wants, which is an abundance of product at a competitive price, which we don't have. I think that I have traveled the state, and I think so many people are so dissatisfied and concerned that my hope is that people will look at me as a person that's been in the business and has success, that I will bring solutions that they want. So, you know, Republicans have won in the past, and we can win in the future. But truly, I'm not running. I am a Republican, but I'm running to be the insurance commissioner for everybody.
I kind of asked a similar question in a different way when I talked about the 99 and it being more red. I liked your answer to that because you said insurance is not political.
It's not.
And it's not. You know, the issue that we have right here, it comes down to two simple words: supply, demand. We do not have enough supply, and we have a crazy abundance of demand. So that's the only problem. That's the first problem. There's a lot of problems, but that's the first problem that has to get settled right away. Good question. I saw Rod. Let's get Rod a mic. I mean, we need it to pick up for the cameras. He can project.
Thank you very much for being here. Quick question on reforms. What can you do, if anything? I believe it all starts with law. And one thing about law, it's drafted by lawyers. So what about tort reform to limit the amount of claims
question.
that can come out and damage the financial outcomes that shouldn't really be available? You know, we hear about these exorbitant claims being paid that shouldn't be. So anyway, what can you do about tort reform, if anything?
Can I frame that through two live examples real quick?
Please.
We had a trucking client in the middle of the night driving down the road. A Tesla driver drunk runs out of power, passes out in his car, and our client's truck runs into him. We paid full policy limit demands to the injured drunk driver pass out on the highway. Example one. Example two, our truck breaks down on a highway and a car runs into us. Paid out full policy limit demands. So that's what he's talking about. How can we have the exact same scenario? One's worse, arguably, because they were a drunk driver.
Yeah, and the carriers are paying out the full demand because when they go in front of a jury, they could end up paying a lot more than that.
Yeah, they're making policy limit demands.
So first of all, our policies are designed to cover the injured when we're at fault. We all agree on that. But the problem is with the liability issues and the aggressive nature of the payouts, it's harming the cost of the policy. So I'm in process right now. I don't know if anyone knows what's going on in Florida, but there's some exciting changes, some tort reforms that have occurred in Florida, and insurance companies are now entering the market and prices are starting to come down. Availability is starting to increase. What a novel idea. So I am for looking at tort reform, and that would be a lawyer issue, but I would be an advocate for that. We're out of whack, and it needs to be brought back to center.
Good question,
Great
Rod.
question.
Tort's a big one. Who else has some? Jalen wanted it. Yeah, Joe, get it.
Hi, thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
One piece of the puzzle here in California is workers' comp reform. We haven't had real reform here since, I think, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's such a big piece of the puzzle because workers' comp affects everybody because everybody works and all the business owners have to pay for workers' comp. What are you going to do to come down on fraud and keep workers' comp costs coming down instead of going up?
Great question, too. So one of the primary factors or roles that an insurance commissioner has is fraud. Fraud, we all pay for fraud. We have to find fraud, detect fraud, and then punish fraud. And isn't that interesting? We don't have fraud in California, do we? That was a joke. So our fraud numbers at the Department of Insurance is going down at this very time when I think we all know that fraud numbers are rampant in California. So I will support our fraud department, make sure that they're well supported, and we go after fraud big time. But I'm also working with a person that has some great ideas for work comp reform. And so you have my commitment that I will be gathering experts regarding work comp, both legal and also in the field and the population, because we have a constitutional obligation to protect the worker, the employee, to help them and then get them back to work. And what we're seeing, what I'm being told, I never was a big work comps writer. But what I understand is that the employee ultimately is not getting back to work. It's an opportunity for maybe some lawsuits So there might be some fraud going on there, but also they get lost in the medical world, and so we aren't getting the employee back. But who suffers? The employer, because their XMOD goes through the roof. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that their XMOD, their cost of insurance goes up, and so who wins? No one wins. So we have to get the employee back to work in a timely manner. We have to keep the cost for the insurance for the employer as low as possible so we can keep them in business here in California.
Hey, can you talk about a little bit on the fraud issue in general? Because there's all types of fraud when it comes to insurance.
Yes.
Well, number one is you mentioned that the fraud numbers are coming down at the DOI. Why do you think that is when we know that fraud isn't coming down?
I think it's leadership. I do. And I've learned a lot about the fraud department. I didn't know this, but the people that work in the fraud department at the Department of Insurance, they're all officers. And I ask them, do you guys carry guns? They carry weapons. I mean, they're officers, a lot of them. And there is a lack of leadership and determination. Their role is to go after fraud, to reduce fraud in the marketplace, so that keeps our premiums lower. And I take that very seriously.
I think I think back to Joe's question, and Berkshire's here, Chubb's here. I mean, Hartford, AmTrust. We have all of these carriers. What we're hearing from their claim people, it's almost like soft fraud. Is there was a change in the way doctors can charge for QME reports. So that means when the employee and the employer / the insurance company are not in an agreement on the injury, nature, extent, et cetera, or what the payout should be, the physical damage, that they go to an independent doctor, that doctor assesses them, issues a report, it's kind of binding. Well, those reports used to have a flat fee. Now they have a per page fee. And every time we have to go back, which happens frequently, you have to ask for supplemental reports to clarify something further. A judge reviews it and says, I need more clarity here. It's now a per page charge. And so what we hear, this is subjective comment, it's not firsthand, but what we hear is now that these attorneys are adding all of these different body parts, so it's different doctors who have to answer and issue reports, and then each one of them are going to need supplemental reports. So it goes back to the movie The Firm, where the FBI wanted him to take down the mob, and he got him on a per page billing issue. And that is driving the nuisance value to settle a probably not legitimate claim, but not true fraud, where they're getting paid temporary disability and getting other compensation somewhere else. It's a hard test to prosecute an individual that way. So we're hearing that's driving a claim that might not be real at all from, like when Schwarzenegger came in, it dropped those case values to like $2,500. In recent times, it's been like 20. Now we're hearing numbers like 50 to just make a nothing claim go away because there's so many body parts added. So that's a challenge because it's not hard fraud. You're not going to send investigators out and catch them getting dual pay, but they're working legally through the system to inflate it and take advantage.
To me, there's where reform could really help. And I've heard the per page as well, that it's $3 per page. Is that sound
We have
reasonable?
carriers in here. Anybody know? Yeah.
Is it-
For psychiatric exams, evaluations are very pricey.
Yeah. And so to me, I don't know when that started, but those are the kinds of reforms that to me, first of all, if I were a doctor, it would be very hard to be a doctor in California. And if I could move into the work comp arena and review reports, I would say that would be a very good business model for me as a doctor. But yet at the same time, it is breaking us. It's breaking potentially part of the system that is broken. So reform would need to come. And how do I solve problems as a business owner? I always brought in my team and we would problem solve. We might do pilot programs. Is there something that we could do to see if this works?
Proof of concepts.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you think the Terminator was so successful with reform in California?
I don't
as
know.
As a Republican.
I have no idea. I don't know the case behind that.
He was pretty
down the middle, though. I mean, like if you listen to him talk, he's a common sense guy.
Who's reasonable, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting back to either side being more reasonable is like what everybody's thirsty for.
Absolutely.
So speaking of that, that's a transition into, these advocacy groups that are out there. Talk to us about someone on the other side of the aisle, like Consumer Watchdog or something like that. What do you see do you see yourself interacting with those groups in, trying to work together or is it battle?
I'm on the record for saying that Consumer Watchdog, for those of you that don't know, they were the ones that wrote Proposition 103, and today they're still benefiting by it, by saying that or fighting the rate increase. So what do I mean by this? Consumer Watchdog, I feel, is greatly responsible for the problems that we have right now. I am a free market person. There has to be regulation. If you play football, we have to know where the boundaries are. We have to have referees. But Consumer Watchdog has stifled the game and destroyed the game. So I'm kind of harsh on that topic, and I'm on the record. He's fired back at me a couple times in writing. And again, it comes back to the simple economics where you have overregulation and price controls. We've seen it all over the world. We have scarcity of product and increased prices, and that's what Consumer Watchdog has done to California.
Yeah, we talk a lot about peace versus war around here. We're like, we always try to solve problems through peace, but you have to have your ammunition and be ready to go to war every once in a while. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, not to put words in your mouth.
Was I too much into
No,
a battle?
I
right
like
there?
it. Yeah, you got to pick your fights. Betsy, what you got? Or let's get a mic for Betsy. Where is it? Glenn was trying to get it back over there. He's ready to go.
Well, first of all, I appreciate your time today and sharing your thoughts with us. So I'm in the work comp space for insurance, and CT claims are cumulative trauma, multiple body parts are a big issue in California. And it's a California-centric problem.
Okay.
So it doesn't happen in the states outside of California. The one thing that I found through the research is over 80% of these claims in the Bay Area that are litigated, over 80% are represented by firms in Los Angeles. Because you were talking about the fraud
COVID changes.
and per page, but I think this is a much bigger piece financially is what's going on in that space.
Yeah, Betsy, didn't COVID open up the way they didn't have to be in
Yes.
person the way they used to?
Yeah, so
and
the attorneys in LA can do it
broadened
remote.
it.
Yeah, from their office in LA.
Wow.
So they're representing people out all over the state.
Yeah, we don't have protected counties anymore. They can reach anywhere.
So
Yes, so they've basically gone to every part of the state and gave us right that COVID opened up that can of worms.
Okay.
So these depots, et cetera, can be done virtually now. And it's created a huge problem. There are other things that are creating rate increase, but the commissioner, or the bureau rather, just asked for a 10.4% rate increase effective on 9/1 this year. And so we're the only state overall, with the exception of Nevada, just took an increase 21% on March 1st. Other states are taking decreases. So I think there's a lot more going on in California that needs to have a deeper dive. We need to look at statute of limitations. It's very squishy, the verbiage on there. So there's a lot of areas in that space that I think would serve, because that's your main mission, is serving the people. But that would serve the people.
and you have my commitment for that.
Okay.
So ultimately, again, our main focus is the employee. But around,
Correct.
that's what work comp does.
Yes.
But around that is you also have to have an employer. And if you have out of control cost, and that, like you say, we have increased costs for the work comp,
Right.
then we have employers that might not be able to afford that. So what I hear is that the entire system might need to look at reform. And again, looking at those boundaries, are we staying within the boundaries of the game, like football? And that's where regulation comes in and also reform. So I'm already working with this attorney that is specializes with work comp and a couple of agents. And I see as commissioner that I will have a focus group on different, with the specialists and how we can make reforms that will benefit the people of California.
Excellent. I think that would just get you a lot of applause in our space.
Great.
Betsy, you hit on something because our clients ask us all the time, like, why is it so expensive here? You know, I either have employees in other states or I have different businesses in other areas that are not this expensive. And the answer that we zoom out at a micro level and say is, kind of goes back to Rod's question around tort, where like the United States is the most litigious country in the world. So when we are placing coverage for multinational clients, they're paying exponential in the US versus anywhere else in the world. Within the United States, California is the most litigious state in the union. Within California, LA is the most litigious county in the state.
Wow.
So if you were there for years, you've had to deal with it. And what she's bringing up is that there's no county that's safe anymore. They're advertising everywhere, they're representing, and we have this just huge concentration of attorneys that's what they're preying on because there's not enough other work out there. So we do need a champion to help us out here. You want to bring her home?
Yeah. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you'd like to share with the upcoming election and what you're getting really excited about?
Well,
Primary, June 2nd.
June 2nd. First of all, my name again is Stacy Korsgaden. And I was telling him, some people find that hard to remember, but I say Korsgaden. But I always like to tell people that there's hope. And it's going to take someone that knows what they're doing. The ballot, you have ballots. If you haven't voted yet, I would be honored to have your vote. And in 4 years, I know that we'll see a more productive industry that will serve Californians. And I'm available. I have made a couple commitments. Number one, I will commit to having an open press conference once a week for people to call in questions and for me to tell the people of California what is going on in the Department of Insurance and what we're doing to make insurance more available to people. So I'm going to have a very open and very communicative commissioner's office. And
one podcast is not enough. People need it
I
every
think
week.
I think you're coming to Sacramento
Because you're
with
supposed to
me.
laugh. Like, come on. Like,
Well, my brother told me, because he's the one that got me in the business, he goes, Stacy, don't ever talk insurance for over 30 minutes or someone's going to shoot you. So
we did a weapon check.
Yeah,
before
we
this.
better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just touching on that, I know you talked about, we started with, your family and your mother and how she, how also you're, losing your father at a very young age and how personal it is to where your insurance really was there for you and how you connect that. Is there like a saying or something that your mom would say today, looking at you now and, just thinking about, the state of, where you're at?
One of the things that what just popped into my mind is work harder. Work harder.
I love that.
And she was a driving force. She always knew how to have fun, but we're here for a purpose. And this is, I believe, a calling for me. And I'll be a hard worker, and I will have, my true north will be the consumer of California.
Well, thanks for doing it. It's I think we don't get enough good people running for these offices because it's your whole life is exposed, right? It's so much different with modern social media and where people can take you. But we all appreciate that you've got your name in the hat. We're wishing you the best. People are going to cast ballots on June 2nd. And we look forward to having you on the flip side back to come be on the podcast again.
Such an honor to be here with everyone and to speak with you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Stacy.